Good morning, students. Hoping that you are staying safe at your homes. Today, I'm going to discuss a topic friction for class 8th. In this topic, we will discuss about friction. We will identify different frictional forces. We will discuss the factors which affects the friction, causes which produces friction, and the methods which reduce the friction. We will discuss its advantages, and lastly we will discuss about fluid friction. So starting with what is friction. Frictional force arises when two bodies are in contact with each other. In other words, I simply says that a frictional force always resists the motion of a body. For example, I am taking that a boy is moving in this particular direction on bicycle. A frictional force will occur between the tires of bicycle and the ground, and it is always directed in opposite direction to that of motion. For simplicity we can say that frictional force always slows up the moving objects. Now what types of frictions are there? It depends upon the relative motion between two bodies. I'm taking a block on floor. If I'm applying a force on the block and suppose it is not moving, so both the bodies are stationary, means the block is also stationary with respect to the floor. In that case, no relative motion is there. A friction is provided, and that friction is known as your static friction. If force is more and block starts sliding over the floor, in that case motion is a sliding motion, and the friction provided is sliding friction. If I take a wooden cylinder and I rolls it over the floor, in that case the motion is rolling motion and the friction provided is rolling friction. We must know that the value of rolling friction is always less as compared to sliding friction. This means that to roll some body needs less force as compared to slide this one. Next is up aeroplane is moving in air. In that case, air is also providing a friction, and that friction is known as your air friction. Aquatic animals such like fish, when moves in water, then water also provides a friction, and that friction is known as viscous friction. So right now we are aware that what type of frictions are there. So to identify different types of frictions, we can easily identify them by checking their relative motion. For example, I'm taking an heavy block. A person is applying force, but his force is not able to slide that box. In that case, a friction is provided by the ground, and that friction is known as static friction. In other words, you can say that in this case, static friction restrict the body to move. In second scenario, if we say a boy is sliding, in this particular scenario we can say the surface is again providing a friction, and that friction is your sliding friction. Again, this sliding friction resist or oppose the motion of the body. Third one, a cylinder is rolling over a inclined plane. In this case, the motion is your rolling motion, and the friction provided is your rolling friction. Now, whether this friction depends upon certain factors, exactly, it depends certain factors. It depends upon the nature of the two surfaces which are in contact. So mainly there are two factors on which this frictional force depends. First one is nature of the surface in contact. Means if two surfaces are smooth or rough. Exactly, it depends upon their nature. For this one, what we are taking an inclined plane, and one cylinder is there which is placed on inclined plane, and right through here two different surfaces are provided. This one is your smooth plane, and the second one is your rough plane. Now what is going to happen when this cylinder rolls up from the inclined plane? It moves on smooth plane and it moves on a rough plane. In both scenarios, if we observe, the distance covered is different. It covers more distance in smooth surface and it covers less surface in a rough surface. It means it depends upon the type of the type of the or in fact I will say it will depend upon the nature of the two surfaces which are in contact. And second thing, the frictional force depend that how hard the surface presses together. Means larger is the body, larger will be the friction. For simple example, I'm taking two blocks. One is heavier one, and one is lighter one. If I will say that the heavier one will apply larger force to this surface and the lighter one will apply smaller force to this one. So larger is the force, larger will be the friction. So in this particular case, the larger block provides larger friction and the smaller block will provide the smaller friction. Now, what is the cause of friction? If we will see two different surfaces which are in contact, if we see it in smaller scale, in that scenario we will observe that the two surfaces are not smooth, but there is some irregularities between the surfaces. And when we place these two objects one over another, these irregularities interlocks over each other. And whenever we are going to slide one body over the another, these irregularities or these interlocking must have to be broken. And due to this reason, a frictional force exists. So larger is the irregularities or larger is the interlocking, larger will be the friction. So larger is the roughness of the surface, it will provide larger friction. And if the surfaces are more smooth, less the frictional force will it provide. Now, if we say that frictional force has certain advantages, it has also some disadvantages. So if disadvantages are there, we have to reduce them. For example, I'm taking that in this block a pipe is going to be rolled down. If we are rolling this pipe, what is going to happen? It will oppose its motion, and due to the opposition, it will provide or it will create heat energy. And whenever there is a production of heat energy, loss of energy is there, means the efficiency will decrease. To reduce this frictional force, what we uses ball bearing in between the contact of two surfaces. The ball bearing will provide the rolling friction, and as we know that rolling friction has smaller value, in that case the heat produced will be less, means loss of energy will be less. So reducing the force of friction, we generally uses rolling, we convert the sliding friction into rolling friction. There are certain other methods which are employed to reduce the friction. We can reduce frictional force either by using lubricants like powders, oil, or greases, or we can use rollers or wheels, or we can use ball bearings. You have observed that while we play carom board, we sprinkle powder to reduce the friction. In machines, we use oil, grease between the moving parts of machine to reduce the friction. We uses wheels to reduce the friction, as we know that sliding friction has larger value as compared to rolling friction. We uses ball bearings in ceiling fans, bicycles and vehicles to reduce the friction. Now this friction has some advantages in our life. We can say it plays important role in our daily activities. For example, if we hold a tumbler in our hands, then a friction is provided between tumbler and our hand. If we are writing something on our notebook, then a friction is provided with between our pen and the paper. If a teacher is writing on blackboard, then a friction is provided between a chalk and the blackboard. Even if we are walking on a floor, in that case a friction is provided between our foot and the floor. In addition to this one, it plays an important role in our life. While we are driving, exactly, it plays an important role. If you observe the shape of a tire, certain grooves are there. So these grooves will help while we are moving in rainy season. These grooves will to wat, uh, allow the water to channel away, so that tire and road can have high level of friction, so that when we apply brakes, the vehicle can stop easily. If we play football, a specially designed shoes are there to provide larger amount of friction between the soles of the shoes and ground. Now, this friction exists everywhere whenever there are two surfaces are in contact. So in case of machines, all the components are in contact with each other, so means there is a chance of frictional force. So if the machines are small, components are small, and component due to the small size of component, the heat produced is also very small. Each time when two different components are in contact, those produces a small broken material, and that is due to the friction. And this breaking of small materials can be used, or we can say that is due to the loss of energy, and that loss of energy, efficiency of that body or machine can be reduced. Next, lastly, we will discuss about fluid friction. Now, what is fluid? Fluid is something which can flow. We are, we are aware that water as well as air can flow. So means while describing a fluid, we must be aware that liquids as well as gases comes under the category of fluids. So anything moving in these fluids, again those experience a frictional force, and that friction is known as fluid friction. And this fluid friction depends upon speed of the object. Larger is the speed, smaller will be the friction. Second thing, shape of the object. So larger is the object, larger will be the friction. This is the reason that the aeroplanes are shaped in such a manner that the fluid friction reduces, so that it can move with fast velocities. And last factors on which it depends, that is the nature of fluid. So bird flies in air because they have streamlined body which reduces the friction. Fishes underwater can move easily due to their streamlined body which reduces the friction. So in this chapter we've discussed about the friction. We have discussed about what type of friction is, we have identified different type of frictions, that is static, sliding, rolling. It might be fluid friction or it might be viscous friction. So I think you have understood all the concept about the friction. After this, I will share a assignment with you and hoping that you will able to complete that assignment. Further, if you have any queries, feel free to talk to me. Thank you and have a nice day.